Hey, my name is Katie Pijanowski, and I'm a certified life coach and motivational speaker, and I'm here to help you unlock your true strength so you can create the life of your dreams. I teach you my best tips to master your mindset, create confidence, and empower yourself to take back your life. It's your time. This is the Mind and Body Strong podcast. Welcome back to the Mind and Body Strong podcast. I have yet another guest here. It's Jen Anthony. She's one of my best friends, and she's also the co-founder of Don't Quit Foundation, which is the mental health awareness half. They raise awareness for mental health, and they have a half marathon and a 5K here in Dallas, which I've done my first half marathon there, and I did the 5K this past year, and we'll be doing one of those coming in the fall. She's also a wife, dog mom, graduate administrative advisor for the Caribbean Medical School, and wannabe runner. But she says wannabe runner, but you are like the person who taught me all about running. So Jen, welcome to the podcast, first of all.
Thank you. Hello.
So excited that you're here. But for all my listeners out there, Jen is like a huge inspiration in my life. And being that this episode is coming in May, which is mental health awareness, I knew that she was the perfect person to bring on because she's taught me so much about mental health and how she uses running to really help advocate for mental health. And she has an incredible story about how she's been able to go through her own process and then how she's now advocating for other people. So Jen, hi. What got you into the mental health awareness field? A little bit about your story, and then of course we want to hear about Don't Quit and all of that.
Okay, where to even start? This is the problem. Everyone has so much to say, right? So what was your first question? It was what got me into mental health awareness?
What brought you to kind of discovering your own mental health process and now moving towards this movement of Don't Quit?
Okay. Well, in 2013, my mother died by suicide, and she had struggled with depression since I was 15. So she struggled with this for 15 plus years. And I watched her go through this process. And this was back in the late 90s when mental health, there was therapists and there was psychiatrists, but I was from Oklahoma. We didn't really talk about it. Like, we went to church, and some people knew that she had depression when she was diagnosed, but we didn't really talk about it. I mean, there's a lot that went on there, obviously, growing up with that. Whenever she died, it just it opened my world to just this other side of things, I guess. And so with that being said, I started running. That's what I started. I started doing that to cope with it. I kind of went to a couple of therapists. I didn't really know about it. I watched her go do medications, all that. Everyone kind of, with just the suicide part of it, it's like, why did it happen? Why did she do this? I mean, there's not really an answer. And I kind of made it my goal from when that happened to help other people not get to that point. I mean, that's kind of a big task. So that's a big thing to say, but I didn't want anyone to feel how she felt to where she got to the point where she killed herself. She lost my dad. We lost my dad 7 years before that. And after that happened, I think she really felt alone. And then even though she tried the therapists and counseling, I mean, you can read her journals. I've started to read them more on and off. And it just really talks about what she was going through. Yeah. So anyways, I was living in Florida. I started running, and that's how I started coping. I actually started a blog called Journey Through 50 States. I had only run one half marathon in 2008, and I swore I'd never run one again. I did another one for fun. This is horrible. I don't know. You know that. Yeah. So I was not a runner. I was never athletic growing up. I wasn't a runner, but running hurt me to the point, sounds weird, that I actually felt something. So when she died, I started running because I felt it and I could control it and I could do all those things. Fast forward 2 years, almost the date later, I found myself in a car accident and it changed my life. I was pulling out from work. I was training for I think it was like my second state. No, my third state I was going to go. I was supposed to go to Louisiana. This was back in 2015. I was feeling good. I was mentally back. I started going back to church. I, found a therapist. I was running, 20 miles a week. I was like, okay, I got this, and I pulled out. And the next thing I knew, I was pinned in my car. A car had come around the corner and T-boned me, going pretty fast. And I looked out. I couldn't move my legs. And the next thing I knew, I was being life flighted to the hospital and being told, I still didn't get it in my head. In my head, I was really stubborn. I was like, okay, I'm in a wreck. I can't find my legs. We're good. Like, what's going on in the emergency room? I'm talking to them. And they were like, you broke your pelvis and you broke your tailbone. We have to have emergency surgery in the morning and all these things. And I'm sitting here. I was like, wait, what?
Did it even register in that moment?
No, it didn't register. And I kept literally the ER doctors, me, I'm like all like, oh, like, okay, so I have a race in 2 weeks. Like, so am I going to be okay to go run it? And they're like, literally, I think I was in shock. Yeah. And anyway, I had this surgery. I get home, I was in the hospital for 5 days. I couldn't walk. I get home and in my head, I'm just, first of all, I'm just so thankful to be alive. I really understood that I could have died in this accident. And so I was really focused on that. And then when it's all said and done and you get home and you're alone and you have your thoughts. And then I realized the only thing that I really, really, truly used to control like the mental aspect, besides, of the other things, was my running. And
that was taken away from you.
Yeah. At some point, I can't even tell you when I remembered like that being taken away and like the feelings of the just not having control. And on the outside, I was still me and acting like I was okay. And I was doing all the positive Facebook posts and, oh my gosh, I've been through losing my dad. I've been through losing my mom. I've been through, all these other things. I'm going to get through this accident. But on the inside, I was literally like crumbling.
Yeah. Like when we talk about mental health too, it's not this thing that you just look at someone and say, oh, that person, they need help because they're clearly depressed. It's like sometimes we put on this mask. And like you said, when you're alone with your thoughts, that's what we're talking about here when we talk about mental health, like building your toolbox. Like when your one thing is running and that's taken from you, what do you do? So what did you do when you came to this realization?
It was hard because then when that happens, then I start dealing with, my mom's death, really, or dad dying because he was, I didn't say earlier, but he was actually in a motorcycle accident. That's how he passed away. So very sudden things. And then this happening. And so you have two choices. So luckily something inside me, it's my faith. I'm a Christian. I believe in God, obviously. And something inside me was like, you got to keep going. You remember why you started running in the first place? Why was that? To help other people not feel alone. Okay, well, you're alone. So I just started reaching. I started reading books. I started literally reaching out, watching my church online. I started journaling. I actually have a journal and I pulled it out the other day. And it was like, that's how I got through that. Not the choice to don't quit, the name of the race that it came to be, is literally like what I had to pull through and do. A lot of crying, a lot of praying, a lot of asking God, why is my mom not here when you're in pain? You want your mom, And I remember just crying, like by myself, dropping something, not being able to pick it up, getting stuck, not able to move, and like crying and going through that, but also knowing deep down that there was a reason that I was going through this, and just being reminded by friends and families and angels that were there, because even though my family's way smaller, I had some angels in my life that got me through to where I am. If you go through it, and like looking back, that was 2000, that was five years ago. Mm-hmm. And then the things in motion that happened, one of the things I started doing is I had a really, really great friend that I met as I was healing, because I did go through, I was in a wheelchair for a minute, then I was in a walker for a minute, because I also, with this surgery, it's not like they just, like, they had to go and put metal on my left side and had a surgery, my stomach and all those things, brought up things. But I moved through, I met a person, his name is Jared, and he, a year before my accident, had been in a car accident. He was in his early 30s, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And I tell this story all the time, but I was somewhere, I was with a friend, I met him through a friend. And I remember I just started physical therapy. I just started walking again. And I was sitting on the ground, and he was there, and he was living right at the time. He was living with his brother and sister-in-law, because he'd only been out a year, like rehabilitating, all that. And I got up off of the ground, and he looked at me, and he said, "Does it still hurt you?" And I'm like looking at this human who has been through this trauma, who literally cannot walk. He will not be able to walk. He is paralyzed, asking me if I'm okay or does it hurt you? And something, just that moment just changed everything. And I will say that changed to where I am today is because of that conversation. And he was actually taking a course, and it was like a self-help development thing. He'd been in it. He's a big advocate for it. So I decided to try it out. And so I started going, and it's just all about helping yourself. It basically brings like all therapies that you ever learned in your whole life into like a weekend or like a course. Mm-hmm. Anyways, between then 2015 and 2016, I just like woke up, and I really woke up, and it wasn't really about me. And I know I would blog about like, oh, I've been through this. It was bigger than me, what had happened. And the last assignment from the last course that I did was developing something that you're passionate about that would also help a community. That was in 2016. Well, I ended up moved back to Texas because my brother is in Oklahoma and my nieces, and so I want to be closer to them, because after you go through something traumatic, you kind of reevaluate your life and like, what do you want in your life? Where are you going? So I moved to Texas, which is where I met you. But I moved here, and I was still taking this course, but they had a branch in Dallas, so I was taking it, and that was the thing. And so I was like, what can I do? My two biggest passions, obviously, mental health and running, because those mental health impacted me, just mental illness impacted me, and then running is what I say saved me. So when I moved to Texas, I actually did my first race back here that I could run. It was too cold to hold. It was the worst. It was the most challenging race I've ever done. It hurt because I never run that far or whatever. And that since the accident, but I did it. And since then, I figured out I could run again. Shortly after that, I emailed someone. I started researching. Someone had told me right after my mom died about an organization called NAMI, National Anthem and Illness. And at the time they told me, I was like, well, what is this going to do for me? Like, my mom's already passed. Like, what is this doing for me? Because at the moment I still didn't get it. I still didn't get the impact that maybe I was going through or whatever. Anyways, I started researching it and seeing what they had, and I realized what they were. And it's this organization that has the resources for the community. They're free resources for peer-to-peer, people that have mental health conditions. You can call them and they can keep in touch with people. And I started putting together, and I was like, this is it. So I started Googling. There had never been a mental health awareness half marathon anywhere in the U.S. There have been rocks, there have been 5Ks, there'd never been. So my mind started going. I was praying about it. I was like, what do I do? Wrote an email to, at the time she was executive director there. Her name is Marsha. She's also the co-founder of this organization. But anyway, I wrote to her, and I wrote her an email. My long story short, I was like, okay, this is going to be long. It ended up being really long. Anyways, we still have the email. I wrote to her. I told her my story. I told her the idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, but hey, do you want to do this? There's never been a mental health marathon. Let's partner. Let's do this. That was 3 years ago, and we're about to have our third race. So here we are. That was long.
No, that was so perfect. And thank you for sharing all those little pieces. I think it's so inspiring to hear how you've gone through so many different obstacles in life that were just thrown at you so suddenly, like nothing you could have controlled. With your parents dying, with your car accident, nothing you could have controlled, but how you took yourself and used running as a coping mechanism. When that was taken away, still you found a way. And that's why I think Don't Quit is such a fantastic movement, that people can really be inspired by people who have done it themselves so that they can find that power within themselves. And I think that's kind of like, to me, what it's all about is like us sharing our truths and what we've gone through so that that story can impact another life. So with the races, and we're coming up on our third one here in October. So if you're in Dallas, definitely check out doing this race or come to the 5K. We love having all you guys there. Go back to when you had the first Don't Quit race. I want you to kind of take us there and like what that experience was like having your dream come to reality.
It was incredible. I wish I would have slowed down a little to maybe to feel it more, to like just like I get more emotional about it now than I did then, because now I'm looking back. We had over, when we did this, we had over 500 people come to our first race, which is like incredible. And I was talking to my husband at some point during all of this, and I was like, a lot of this, I'm like, I don't try to make it personal, but it was very personal at the time, because it goes back to like the not wanting people to feel alone. Like, how do you do that? And then all of a sudden seeing 500 people come together and they all are there for a reason. There are all people that they came in for the run or the walk, they came in for that, but I'd say 75% are there because they knew someone, they were going through something, they had a mental health condition, they were grieving, they had lost someone, they felt alone, but then you have this community of people that are just there. Everyone, like we've talked about it 100 times, everyone has a story. At some point in our life, we are all going to go through something that breaks us and that hurts us, or we're going to know someone that has gone through something that's hurt them, and the stigma is lessening. It's still there, the stigma is still there. We know it. Even for me, I was talking to a friend. I don't talk about, my panic attacks or my anxiety, right? I talk about everyone else's. I was just talking to her there on the phone. Like, she was sharing with me. She'd never opened up about it. And she's like, I know you do this, like talking about it, but just at that moment, like looking back, even the last second race, it's like just people coming together, knowing for that run or that walk or being out there volunteering, that we're all out there for that same sort of reason, for the same cause. Like, there's no word to describe that feeling and how I just want to keep growing. Like, I want people all over the world, everywhere, to know that you're not alone and you have resources. I think that was the main thing with my mom when like back in the regret is like, I wonder, oftentimes if she would have had the resources, like other people, to go through this with her. Like, NAMI has peer support groups. So when you go to the group, there's going to be someone there that is going through something with anxiety, depression, that has, schizophrenia, whatever it is. And you can talk about it. And just to know you have that group, like I always look back, and I know I can't change that. And I've moved through this, but looking back being like, man, if I would have had a group like NAMI, like she'd have got involved. And I mean, therapists and church and all that's good. It's awesome. But you also need to relate to people, and so that's kind of the biggest thing for me with the race is starting the movement and kind of getting people together and talking about this. Like, It's so funny. You wear Don't Quit shirts. I was like, oh, what's that race? And then you talk about it, and you talk about mental health, and then you learn their story, like what they've been through. I've learned so much about so many people with this, and it's incredible. And it just, if one person reaches out and makes that choice to live, like it's worth it.
Totally.
Like,
yeah. And I think looking back even 5 years ago, this wasn't talked about as much as it is now. Like, we are talking about it. We're bringing awareness to it. People are starting to be honest about what they're going through. And I think that's so important, because if you keep all of those things in the dark, there can't be healing. Like, you have to shed light on it and let yourself know, like, that there are options. I think and I was in this place too, where I was just feeling, and when I learned about Don't Quit, I haven't personally ever been diagnosed with like depression or anxiety or anything like that, but I experienced like daily anxiety and like going through my own tough times, and went through a very hard season of my life that I was reminded of this, where I felt like very tunnel vision, that it was only one choice, and I felt just very defeated. And I think Don't Quit's message spreads that there are options, there are people, there are resources, that you are not alone. And like, especially you helping me through all that and reminding me every single day, even when I did not want to listen, was like what really helped impact me. So I would love to hear your view too, because I think when people hear mental illness or mental health, they're like, well, I don't have a depression, I don't have anxiety. Like, what does mental health mean to you? Who needs to be aware about mental health?
Everyone. No. No, so you think about it, you think of it as a diagnosis, right? So my mother was diagnosed major depressive disorder. She's depressed, like she's diagnosed. That's what it was, right? And then I told you my story, and like, okay, well, Jen, you went through this, so obviously you're gonna have anxiety or PTSD, right? Like, so it's actually, I literally had this conversation 2 days ago with a friend of mine who called and like shared her story. We're talking about it, and one of the things she said was, well, you've been through this or that happened. Like, I don't have anything to make me feel like what you're saying. Like, I don't have anything to make me, anxious or feel depressed or whatever. And that's the thing. It is a chemical thing, and everyone goes through it at some point. And some people do it short-lived. Some people maybe after they grieve. Some people maybe they're diagnosed. Some people aren't diagnosed. And that's the thing is, I think that it's not, for me, and I'm not politically correct or whatever I'm about to say, I'm not a psychologist, but for me, it's not about a diagnosis or saying you are or you not. Obviously, some people that have mental illness, they have to have medication. I'm totally for that. If you have to have it, some people just can, they may be depressed and get to go exercise and they feel better. But I think it affects every single human in different ways in different areas. And when you say mental illness, it sounds kind of like a scary word. It's like, oh, I don't have mental illness, or you don't want to talk about it because it's like, oh, I don't have problems. Because also in today's world, we put stuff out there on Facebook that we're happy, or like, this is what we're doing, and we're all like motivating each other, which is awesome. And then it's like, there's another side to it. Like we could have gone into facets in your life or my life that we didn't really talk about, like the darker things that happen, and that's okay too. You have your close friends for that. But mental illness, mental health affects every single human. And sometimes it takes going through something with someone or having something happen to you for you to realize it. And I can totally appreciate someone that comes up to me and says, I don't get it. Because that's okay. Like, I didn't get it. Like, I did this, NAMI has a program for students. And yeah, you go into the schools and you talk to like high schoolers and you give your story and they ask questions. I remember one of the students, my first time to really ever, maybe my second time to go share my story and talk about mental health with them and like the signs and what you should do, raised their hand, probably like 15 years old, and said, did you go to therapy with your mom? And I'm like, looking back, no. And you know what? I wish I would have gone to some sessions with her, because I was literally 15. I mean, to me, my normal with her, I was 15, 16. She would go to the hospital sometimes. No one really knew. I was very involved in school. I was, senior class vice president, doing all the things. And she would always show up with my everything. And that was kind of like my reality. So to me, when I look back, it's like we had her in therapy. She was seeing a psychiatrist. She was on the medication. We were praying for her. We're doing all those things. But I wasn't in it with her. My dad, bless his heart, he was her savior. Like he did so much for her, but we didn't get it. We didn't try to get it. And so when I looked at him and I go, no, but you know what? If you know your mom or a friend or someone's going through it, I would say go through it with them. Research it. Find out what they're going through, because it's all about knowing what it is. You don't have to understand what someone's going through to go through it with them, or just even to say, I don't understand, but I know you're hurting. Like, well, how can I be here? So to me, I don't know if that answered the question. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent. To me, if it will affect everyone at some point. And it's just really about being kind and not judging someone else for whatever they're going through in life, just not giving up on anything,
Yeah, offering compassion to people. And I love how you said, just when you're talking to someone and just saying, I don't understand. Please enlighten me. Like, please tell me more about what your experience is, because we don't know. Everyone's experience is different. And even if there's multiple people with depression, they're all going through it differently. It's all being coped with differently. So asking someone like to tell you more about it, what does that feel like for you? Like, what does it feel like? Just really kind of understanding that, and just, I think listening is probably the best part of it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about like social media highlights, and I think we definitely get involved in that, which kind of made me bring up like an idea of people being afraid to be vulnerable. But I see like you share your story so openly, when I see other people share the really hard, not so pretty parts of their life, I feel, and this is my personal experience, I feel like that person is so strong. Like, but that stuff's hard to share about yourself.
It's
right?
so hard. And I'll tell you right now, I have a very hard time being vulnerable. I do. I've fought with it, and I always wanted to have the answers. Just like even on here going on, I'm like, okay, what are we going to say? And that's something I'm working on. I am in therapy. I go every week, and one of the things that I struggle with is disassociation. If I disassociate, I can tell you my whole story and all people, everything that happened, and not feel it. And that's important to really just highlight. Like, being vulnerable is the hardest thing, and I'm definitely still working through it. I think we all need to do that at some point. I mean, everyone needs to, but it is scary to be vulnerable. It is scary to say, this is what I'm going through. It's easy to talk about it. I mean, I'll tell you right now, like, it's easy to talk about being vulnerable all the time.
Sure.
But I appreciate you, because I see you do that on so many levels. And sometimes you take a step back and be like, okay, like, where are we with that feeling, or, so.
And you've done that for me too, of like reaching out and be like, okay, like what's, like, I'm kind of seeing some stuff that you're posting, but like what's really going on. And I think having those people that are not going to take it's like everything's fine as an answer. Like, I started using something that you taught me, and Jen always says this phrase that I love. She always says, how's your heart? She doesn't say, how are you? Because the automatic answer is I'm fine or I'm good. She's asking what's really going on behind that. And that's something I started actually implementing with other friendships that I have, is like, how's your heart? And it's funny, like, some people are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I don't want the vanilla answer of I'm fine or I'm good. I want to know what's really going on in your life. And I want you to know that I'm here, and I want to listen. And I think that was like so powerful for me when I first heard it, because when you hear it, it's not like you can just say I'm fine or good. Like, you really think about it. And I think that question, like,
you asking me,
struck me as like, how am I, like, what is my heart saying, because it really caught me. But with the vulnerability thing, I think for me, like, what helps is really writing it out. You mentioned journaling as a great coping mechanism. That really helps me. I find for myself, when I get really emotional, it's like I cannot speak it until I've written it. But if you give me a pad of paper and a pen, I can write you stories, all the stories. And then once I've done that multiple times, I can then speak it. But some people, like, that's how they have to go through it, is they have to really, like, go through it like that. And I found out from a counselor of mine that it's a little bit of a stress response when you feel like you're in danger, which is that vulnerable experience you're having, feeling like you might lose friendships or be looked down upon for sharing certain parts of your story. A stress response is to literally draw blood away from your throat, because that's not, like, important in a stress response. Like, you need blood to your extremities to, like, run away because there's danger. And I was like, oh, I've never thought about it like that. But that's literally the experience I have when I'm feeling vulnerable or stressed or sad or very emotional. Like, I cannot speak about it. And it's like biological, like, blood goes away from your throat. And you feel like
that's awesome.
And I actually was talking to someone yesterday about, when you're feeling that, like, really clenched up feeling in your throat, oftentimes a question you can ask yourself is, what are you not speaking the truth about?
That's true. It's hard. I think it's hard to get there sometimes. So, like, with the journaling, like, I'll notice that sometimes I used to journal a lot, but I haven't been. And then you ask, well, why are you not writing it? Like, where is it stuck at? Another thing is so funny, especially being in the fitness world. I know that you were a trainer. I know what you do. And, I'm a runner. Like, I'll be honest with you. When I get super stressed out, I don't go for a run. Sometimes I do unhealthy things, because that's easier. And I think talking about that's really important too. And just being honest with ourselves, not with everyone else. And that's another thing I think that we get. It's like, who do you tell? Like, for me, it's like, I need to tell everyone different things, but it's like, sometimes you have to just sit with yourself and be like, okay, what am I going through? And that's what I think with the mental health, but then not too long, because then you don't want to just be in your little bubble. So that's why with the Don't Quit and the NAMI and with different organizations, like, they have people for you to reach out to. Like, the whole basis of this with the mental health world we're talking about is like, you are not alone. Like, you sharing what you just shared, like, that's, I did not know that. And that makes complete sense about why journaling would help. Anyways.
But some people do, like, feel better speaking it. So it's all about, journaling. I know I have few people in my life who are very resistant to journaling, which is, I always encourage them to try it, because I think that deep down there might be a fear of actually seeing what's going on in your mind, like on paper. I think that's scary for some people, and I totally get that. But there's also so many other avenues. Like, it doesn't have to just be this prescribed method of go run or go exercise.
Right. So
like you said, I love that you brought up the unhealthy thing too, because like offering compassion to yourself and to others who are experiencing stress and they go to their automatic response. Like for me, it's always overeating.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, I don't know if you want to share yours.
I have a lot of them. I have a lot of things that there are. No, but it's
okay.
It's when I was talking to a friend yesterday. She helps with the marketing for Don't Quit. And we're about to launch something during this whole, with this coronavirus, like everyone is definitely more alone, just like in your heads and like dealing with things. And I've been to a Bible study, and on Monday she was like, I feel like there's just like this magnifying glass on me because you're home every week, you're doing all the things. Anyway, so we wanted to do, you see all these things going on right now about like the virtual runs and like the miles and whatever. And I'm into that. Like I use running for me, that's my mental thing. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. And it's not about me exercising and being in shape. It's like, okay, I'm going to go run 13 miles. I'm going to do it, whether I walk it or I run it. It's just about finishing. That's why whenever I run with you, and anyone else that runs with me will know this, I'm like, I'm fine with us walking, but you pick a point and then you run to that point and then you walk. Because I feel like if you're running, 5 miles, all of a sudden, okay, I got to take a break, and you just stop. In my heart, I'm like, oh my gosh, I quit that. So, but if I'm like, okay, I'm getting tired, I feel it. See that pole up there? I'm going to run to that pole and then we're going to walk. It's just about that, getting to that point, whatever that is.
About like an intentional stopping point.
Right. Just an intentional. I know in life you can't do that. Obviously, I should know that more than anyone. Like, you intentionally can't do everything. I'm working on that too. But, anyways, we're seeing all these challenges or these motivating things. So we're going to do something. And it's going to it's all about bringing mind and body together, the mental part of it. So whether it's drawing, sending a note, going and running, going outside and walking, just doing movement for a day. Like, it's about everything. And so the one thing about, just don't quit. Yes, it is a half marathon, a 5K. Yes, there's a meaning behind it. And there is something to be said for someone that can go run 13, 20 miles or do those things. Yes, they have some mental things in there that get you there. You've done it. You did a marathon. But it's more than that. And I think for the organization, I want it to be, the light is about the resources, about the help, about there's different outlets for, like you said, for every single person. And also about giving yourself grace, because we all, every day, no matter how good you have it, there's days you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to move, and you don't want to work, and you don't want to do those things either, and being okay with that. But then just getting back up the next day or the next week, and having people to reach out to, having podcasts to listen to. I tell you what, podcasts, I've listened to some really great ones. After my mom died, I literally, that's all I listened to was Elevation Church. If anyone wants to hear it.
I was going to say.
Yeah, he saved my life. He really did. Like some just real stuff. You want people in your corner that are real people too. So anyways, we could talk forever about that.
All the time. I love it. But it is so important to make sure you're surrounding yourself with positive content, especially when you're feeling down like that and you don't want to do anything, and like understanding like that's okay, and offering compassion again to yourself. I'm always constantly saying like, just be curious about like what you're going through, and like do it without judgment, because that just, whenever we're judging ourselves, like we're just putting resistance in the way of us finding a way through. So I think that if we can just sit with ourselves, like you said, or talk to a friend or do whatever we need to do, even if it's nothing, like that's, there is no expectation we're setting here. It's just, you need to work on finding what works for you, build up your toolbox. When one thing doesn't work, you have multiple others out. Because in different seasons, like I heard you mention about how you're not journaling lately, like it's just a different season, like I pick up my journal, sometimes I'm writing in it like religiously every single day. And then there's some times where I'm just don't, and I wake up and I'll read, or I'll do my workout right away. So it just depends on the season that you're going through too. And right now we're specifically in a different season. Everyone's trying to cope through it in a different way. And I think that it's great to recognize that and to understand that there is no expectation. You don't have to do anything. You can just be with yourself and figure out what you need. And you don't have to reach for all these external things to fill you up.
Right.
Yeah. I love you. And I love your story.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I love you. You're so special. Like I'll never forget our first 9-mile run that we did. together.
Yes. I have an episode. I think it's like one of my first episodes on the podcast. So you guys can go back and listen to that about how I ran 9 miles after I've
It's so funny. People are like that talk like, I'm not a runner. I'm like,
right. But it's like,
yes, you are. That like, it doesn't. And that's why I say wannabe runner, because I don't feel like a runner, because I don't do all the, portrayed running things. But then you look at it and it's like, so since the accident, like I've run half marathons, like I'm almost, a lot of it got pushed back.
Are you up to 14?
14. I was going to have my 15th in April in Kentucky, and it got pushed back. But that's just, it's my goal that I want to finish. I want to finish it for my mom. I want to finish it for me. Running looks different for me now. I don't, to me, I used to run, 20, 30 miles a week or whatever. Now I run twice a week and I do cross training. And that's another thing when life hits you with things that happen you don't expect, you have a new normal. And going back to like the mental health world, like I would like to say this too, like if you find out that you are dealing with something, whatever season that you're in, whether you get diagnosed, whether you're just going through something, like I don't like to look at people like, you are not anxiety, you are not depression, you just have that, just like you have anything else, right? And you go through it. So just like when things happen, like in your life, you just learn how to deal with it in healthy ways, sometimes not healthy, but you try to get healthy, right? And you try to deal with it and you move on. So that's just really something important to think, because I always say, like, what's your new normal when people go through bad things, whenever families go through something, like what's your new normal? And for some days it doesn't have to be good things, but then you just have to find out how to get there. And like the whole thing is just like, you're not alone. Like people are not alone out there. And that's like the biggest thing. Like when I read mom's journals, how alone she felt, but she was so loved. Like you wish you could just go back and like explain it differently. Yeah. But you can't always. And so that's why I just, like, my husband's like, you could talk to the wall, you can talk to anyone. I'm like, it's because I want everyone I come in contact with to feel like, they're special. And like, and I really mean that too. So
you do make everyone you talk to feel special.
You're so sweet.
You do. And if you meet Jen ever, you will know that she will instantly connect to you. You will instantly know her story, and she will know everything about you and your life and what you love, everything. It's her superpower.
I can learn your life story in 5 minutes or less, probably.
Literally can. That's like her job. To know to know you and to understand you and let you know you're not alone. And she just lives that every single day. So
I try. It's not, we're not perfect. We try, right? We try.
I feel like the whole running mindset could be a totally, completely different podcast, because I have so much to say about that.
I know.
I'll probably talk about it more as I work my way back into my running journey after, being with a injured hip. But even with that, I ran a half marathon.
Yep.
I didn't really train for that, but I did it. And I did it. Yeah. I was so proud of myself for doing that. Like there was no expectation other than do my best. And I did. Mm-hmm. And
the running thing really is the mental thing. Like it goes, like to me, it goes together. Yeah. Because with running, it hurts sometimes after a mile, sometimes after 2 miles, obviously with your hip, you're hurting. Yeah. And it's just about getting your mind to where you're going to finish it. Even if you walk it, you run it, life's like that. Life throws stuff at you left and right all the time.
Well, and to go to that
can't get up and do it.
With that half marathon we did in Indiana. So Jen and I and Jordan, our friend, did a half marathon in Indiana. And I didn't really train for it because I was scared, honestly. And I did the marathon, the half marathon. I was hurting afterwards. My hip flexor and like that hip area was really hurting. But then a couple months later, I went to do a marathon. I didn't finish it, but it was surprising that I went into that marathon knowing that no matter what happened, like I was going to make this the best, most fun experience ever. And I made it to mile 18, and I don't think I really had any pain like afterwards. So it's awesome. It just shows. And I did another podcast episode on this, Mindset Behind the Miles. You can go check out that one. But I just think that really says a lot with physical activity and really with anything. I mean, this mindset that I took to apply to that marathon can be applied to every other area of life, because how you do one thing is how you can do everything. Like it applies. It's just whether you choose to do that or not, Mm-hmm. So yeah, so amazing. I think mental health is something, like you said, that I think everyone needs to be aware of. I think that it's something we all experience through going through different transitions. Like you said, new normals, we all have that at some point in our life where we have to experience that grieving process, where we experience negative emotions, and like understanding that, welcoming those in and knowing it's okay and that you're going to survive and you're going to make through it. That I think it's so important to talk about and to not quit. So Jen, any last final thoughts, and as well as where they can find more about you and Don't Quit?
Oh my gosh, there's so many final thoughts. Just, you're not alone. Like, there's just the resources. I keep reiterating it. Like, there's so many resources and people out there that truly care, whether it's, you reach out to an organization, whether it's your religion or church or whatever. There's so many things out there. I always say I didn't save my mom, right? I couldn't, and I go back and you look at that, and there's so many other, like, suicide rates. I mean, we can go, there's so many numbers of like teen suicide and then military, you know what I mean? Like 22 suicides a day, you see that. And it's like, just knowing that they're not alone, knowing you're not alone. And, if you want to go find resources, you can go, we have a Facebook, it's really easy. Don't Quit 13.1. If you just Google, it'll pull everything up. Our Don't Quit Foundation that we just started a few months ago, all that, it's a foundation that I started with my husband, and then also Marsha Rogers. She's on it too. We just basically, it's just putting on the race right now. And that race is going to raise money for other nonprofits that have mental health resources or that have to do with that. So this year, of course, we are partnering with NAMI North Texas. If you have any questions about how to get help, where to go, please visit Don't Quit 13.1. Go to NAMI North Texas directly, and they have that. So I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I would love Don't Quit 13.1 to be like another, like Susan G. Komen, where it goes everywhere, nationwide, where just people get together. I will share this last story. I was at the race last year, and I had a mom come up to me. I think I told you. Did I tell you the story? I don't know.
I'm not sure. Tell it anyway.
She came up to me. It was during the race, and I was running around and doing things, and she was like, "Oh, you're Jennifer Gray." That was my old last name. I'm Jennifer Anthony now, but I was Jennifer Gray. She's like, "You're Jennifer Gray. Did you help put the race on?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "My son was diagnosed with depression last year. He was suicidal. He doesn't talk about it. He won't talk about it. He's on medication. He found this race online, and he's running his first half marathon."
Wow.
And
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that, like, sometimes you go through things and you do things, you're like, "Oh, what am I doing?" You get in the middle of it. And then I hear those stories. And at that moment, during that time that he's running, he's looking around. We had over 600 people this year. He's looking around. And like I said, some people are there for the run and the race, and it's awesome. And then they actually, on the race, you learn about what the race is about, right? You kind of learn that through any race that you do. But this young man, whoever he was, I don't know who he was, at that moment during that race, knew that he was surrounded mostly by people that were there for the same reason as him, for that, just to not feel alone. So anyways, I will end on that, but I take that with me anytime I kind of get disgruntled, or I'm like, "Oh, is this going to work? Are we going to have run?" Whatever. I think of that story, and it's like, he looked it up online. He came out here. He did this. Like, that's why we're doing this, to spread awareness, to help people not feel alone. That's why we're doing it.
So powerful. And yeah, I mean, it helped that one life, and it's going to continue to help hundreds, if not thousands of people as you continue to grow. And I totally believe that it can be another Susan G. Komen. It absolutely is where we're moving towards, and especially with everything that's going on in the world, we need this more than ever. And I am just so thankful that you had the courage and to share your story so that more people have the courage to share theirs.
Appreciate you, Katie.
Oh, love you again. But we have all of Jen and Don't Quit's information in the bio, so definitely go check it out if you're interested. If you are in North Texas or anywhere, just come to the Don't Quit race, do the 13.1 or do the 5K. I'll be there. Jen will be there.
We have a virtual run too.
We have a virtual run.
Yeah.
That's new. So you can participate no matter where you are at in anywhere. You can participate in this movement. So Thank you again, Jen, for joining us. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Mind and Body Strong podcast. You are what makes this movement and message possible. If you loved this episode, share it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or take a screenshot and share it on your favorite social media platform and tag Mind and Body Strong. To learn more about coaching and courses to help you take your journey to the next level, visit mindandbodystrong.com.